good.
Okay. Okay. So, here we are again, 5 minutes later. And so, okay, then, Joseph, you've been making the notes. We'll just play off your notes.
I would like a little bit, to know a little bit more about exactly how you help people, because I think that's one of the things, in your path, right? Like, yeah, you're into the holistic kind of thing.
Yeah, so the work of Wellness Works?
Yes.
Hey. Well, the origins of Wellness Works began I met a nurse, and she introduced, it was my first introduction really to something holistic or whatever this was back in 1984. And I came into that situation of meeting her, I thought I wanted to be a storyteller I was like in my 40s, I wanted to be a storyteller. And when people say, what kind of stories, I'd say, I want to tell the story of the last person I met to the next person I meet, because there was always a story there, something that I recognized in a person, whether it be a child or a person. So then I came up with, I just wanted a space where people could interact with one another, but in a way to begin to appreciate who we are as human beings. And so when I met Nancy, she was this nurse, she had a vision dream to have a holistic healing center with various practitioners of whatever modality they had, and kind of, paying the rent together mutually, but having having more than just one therapy. But she had a very strong desire to teach people self-care around Chinese medicine and holistic medicine, and doing acupressure for them, but teaching them how to do it for themselves. So when I met her, how she understood Chinese medicine and her own nursing and all of that, it sort of filled in a blank for me. All of my life had been sort of disembodied. But it was really exciting to have such integrity around the issue of healing and health that I had not even considered. It's pretty much typical American. If you got sick, then you took a pill, or So that got us started, and the space that I wanted, it would be a bookstore then, in a bookstore kind of coffee house and kind of environment. So that's how we got started. That was the energy for it, and so how do I help people? I really couldn't give you that answer. It's just I continually try to create a space for healers and other folks that have integrity about them to come together. And then we've never done much advertising, and most of the healers that find us because somebody told them about us, and the clients that come the same way.
Actually, you gave a perfect answer to what I was trying to, the information I was looking for. I think that's perfect. That's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
That's the best answer you could give me. This interests me, for many reasons. One of them is, there's a lot of people that believe, that, the body and the, physicality and everything, the illnesses, are completely, body physically centered, So this kind of approach, is not so popular yet, the holistic, spiritual and physical, but it goes hand in hand. You cannot separate one from the other, you have to, some people try to, get away from the spiritual because they want to be physical, and, but you can have one without the other. So I think this is a road with many possibilities. And ever since I became a student of Mike's material, I became interested in, all this thing, there's a lot going on.
How did you come in contact with his material? What brought you to the material?
Well, very long search, for answers for myself.
Mhm.
It was a pretty rough path for me for many years, and I knew there was something going on with me, but I didn't know what. I searched everywhere, I could say, and I mean, couldn't find answers for many years, many years. And
Answers in terms of your physical health, or answers in terms of?
that's a good question. Yeah, I would say, well, the first, the first thing, yeah, in terms of physical, relation,
Mhm.
yes, because I've learned that as soon as you find that balance, we were talking about chakras the other day, and Mike and I, and was startled, to learn so much about chakras from him.
Mhm.
I don't know much about chakras, but for example, I learned. I mean, there's 7, and there's one at the solar plexus. That's the 3rd chakra. That's the one in charge of emotions, aliveness, personal power, and all sorts of things. Also, the bad stuff like anxiety, depression, and things like that. That's the center. That's solar. That's meaning center. And we had a chat about this, and I was talking to him about some research I made on the side, in which some people offered a visual exercise, visualizing for finding balance for the chakras, and the chat we had, some information that Mike gave me, which was pretty amazing, is that each of the chakras has to have support in some way, in some kind of way. So you cannot balance, the ones. I mean, probably the lowest ones. From here, if you don't have a sustain, a support, a foundation, in Mike's words. So you have to address, what particular situation is going on, and I think that the chakra approach is interesting. So so that's the thing. I mean, yeah, my path to breathing. For several years, I knew there was something wrong with my breathing. There was something, and I knew it was affecting me in many ways you wouldn't even believe, probably. And it was until I came into contact with Mike. Ever since I started with his material, his kit, his optimal breathing kit. You know, took me only few minutes after beginning to do these exercises, and then I said, boom, this is it. All these years of research and seeking the answers here and there, and then boom, there was a moment that I had it all. I had it. I was that, and that was it's gonna be 8 months ago. I was in Mexico, and ever since that happened, I kept with the program and everything, and I said I gotta go see him. Absolutely, I gotta go see him and learn as much more as I can from him, as possible, and that's my path so far till here, But
Mary Lou, could you maybe share what we've been doing? You've been filling in the blanks. You're 74 years old. You've been on the path most of your life, and still the breathing seemed to have some way eluded you. What you've learned anyway. Could you expand on that?
I can. Let me think about it. I go blank when you ask me directly. I never stop talking if you don't ask me, but if you ask me.
She is quite a talker.
Well, I think for me, what was it? The question was what brought me, and I'll get to it, but I'll have to come meander, because I think when I met, Nancy Raz was her name, my friend and partner in this center, almost from the beginning of knowing her and working with her, it began the revealing of that symptoms, our bodies, and when they're out of balance or they're dis-ease, is a call of the soul. It's like it's not to be cut out or medicated. It's to be looked into and listened to and addressed. And it's part of the whole is distressed. And so that symptoms actually are friends, and are there to get to listen to them. So that has been a major influence, understanding from my 40s onward. And I read there were so many things, but I remember reading a book that Carl Jung wrote an introduction to. It was like Ramakrishna was a saint of Hindu, that he had cancer. He was like in his, I don't know, 80s or 90s. Anyway, in reading that book, and it was in the bookstore, somebody approached this Hindu saint as to how can he explain that he has cancer. And his answer was, and I've never forgot it, was, cancer is the gift for the person who has everything. And that was just like, whoa.
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
And that was early on in our working at Wellness Works and Alive and Well. And so that was just such a shocking thing, because really how I had met Nancy was learning to be a hospice volunteer for people dying of cancer. So it was like that just opened the door, So that was somewhere in the 80s that happened, whatever I read that. But then when we started, Nancy went to a conference for learning more about AIDS back when it was still pretty much just people didn't want to be anywhere near anyone with AIDS. There was great fear, and it was pretty much a death sentence. Even the meds they had didn't stop it. It kind of maybe prolonged life. And she went to a conference called AIDS, Medicine, and Miracles. It was in Colorado. And when she got there, it was some doctors, some nurses, many people with AIDS, just kind of like the entire community that was at all interested in trying to figure out how to. And she came home from that, kind of had a spiritual awakening, like that. The question is, how do you live with AIDS? You may be dying, but how do you live with AIDS while you're in that state of dying? And she felt called to she wanted to start a free clinic and offer acupressure and their understanding of Chinese medicine to people living with HIV and AIDS at that time. And when she came back, we were kind of, at that point, kind of an entrepreneurial endeavor of trying to have a wellness center and bookstore. And so when she came back, though, I was open to it. I didn't know that much about AIDS either, but as I heard her, and so that was in 1990, and it started us on this path of offering. It just grew. Very, very quickly, she offered to teach nurses acupressure for free in exchange for volunteering in a free clinic. And so we went from 1 day a month to 1 day a week, and then we went to a center, and then it came to our place. And so what happened, it just took us into this path of offering holistic healing to people most in need and unable to pay, and in working with that population of men and women, she and I, it just completely opened our understanding of healing, that we received equally to what they were thanking us for giving to them, of touching them for one thing, but then acupressure, and then acupuncturists volunteered, and everybody was a professional, certified. They were willing to come and work because they had a heart for this population that was sort of the plague of the world, but in the course of working, I remember one talking to one man that I had worked with, and wasn't qualified to do, wasn't certified or professional. I knew how to do acupressure, but I didn't. But I would wash their feet, and that was extremely touching to them. I could kind of massage, but it wasn't therapeutic. And this one man said to me that he never wanted AIDS, and it wasn't, but now that he had it, and having had this experience of coming to Wellness Alive and Well was at the time, and receiving both acupressure and just the environment that we were in, he would never give it back.
So I think we're looking at the illness as an opportunity for awakening and
That's right.
for appreciating, and I just want it to not kill us.
Mm-hmm.
And so my feeling is that there's things that are missing in these environments that need to address the breathing, that are overlooking it, and that we'd have a higher success rate if people, yes, appreciate the illness, yes, cancer is something I've been given as a gift to teach me something. I just don't want it to kill them. And I want them to come out on the other side and then be able to teach others to do the same. And so I'm a little frustrated with the let's have a peaceful death,
Well, the thing,
aspect, of that.
that kind of what happened from this experience with this, and they actually verbalized it. He wasn't the only one as
Mhm.
as we went on. But over the years, then, coming to the question of what brought me to breathing, was you'd actually experience people that would come in with a diagnosis of cancer that they had 6 months to live, or 4th stage breast cancer, and they would come in having we never had anybody, we never have people come in that don't have within a Western diagnosis of some, they can't come to us and completely bash Western medicine. It's not like we're going to be the saviors or that kind of thing. So there's that kind of working with, and we've had, and I've seen it happen. The people with cancer will come, and the veterans with the post-traumatic stress, where they turn around, you get on a healing journey, and so people who have eventually died with their cancer diagnosis completely come into living their life, and completely recognize they're living and dying, but they're living with cancer, they're living with, and you know it. They might change their diet, they might not, but there's a complete, it's not the enemy, it kind of an experience. So with coming to this, to Mike's work with breathing, for myself personally, all these years I've benefited from experiencing acupuncture, acupressure, and many modalities and working. And I would most often go and say, I'm not breathing. My breath, I don't have a good breath. I need to, and so acupuncture or whatever it would be, or doing Tai Chi, all those things, I could do it, but it didn't sustain. And the older I got, the stress of kind of the doing the work, just everything, the stress of it just caught up with me 2 years ago, mostly 2 years ago, with a really trauma that felt like the rug got pulled out from under my life. And gradually over this two and a half years, everything in working with everything that I've traditionally done, but also kind of going to Western medicine, working with it, my blood pressure began to be, spike and be high and all this, and no meds worked with it. It would make it, I gradually, it got more extreme and more bizarre and higher and lower, and go to the ER room and they consider panic anxiety or whatever it is you're a nutcase, you know,
Yeah.
and just leave you be there. So it really got really exacerbated, really worse about 3 months ago, since the beginning of the year. And so, because I knew the Western medicine approach wasn't supporting, and I couldn't get a handle on breathing with just doing the holistic things that I was doing, that I just Googled one day, breathing. I just needed to know how to, I knew that I wasn't able to get into the parasympathetic system. I couldn't relax. It's like the fight or flight I recognized, and everything that I thought was relaxing wasn't triggering that relaxation. And nothing I didn't know where, so when I Googled, and breath, blood pressure, something, up came optimal breathing. And, I hit, if there were any before it, I hit those as well. But there might have been something in your tagline that intrigued me to hit. And I read all the way through it, and I ordered the kit. And then when the kit came, I didn't quite know what to do with it. And I looked at all the things and read it, but then I called Kim. I called here, and Kim answered the phone, and I just said, do you guys do classes? I need to, I want to come. But at that point in time, I didn't have the capacity. I had neither the stamina, my blood pressure. I was not physically able to do it. So she said, well, we don't do classes, but yes, Mike does. So that became a goal, that I would start working with the kid on my own and doing the strapping and these as best I could. And so when I'd have these spikes, and they'd happen in the night, and I just had to I had to say, okay, here's a panic. And I really, what I did is it was the first night really that I knew I couldn't depend on anything other than my own capacity, and enough of the breath. I had got this one, the one where
the reflex trigger.
The trigger.
Mm-hmm.
But when I woke up, and I knew immediately I can't go into panic. That's fight or flight. So now I have to stop that and try to get over here on the parasympathetic. And what came to me before I even got on the breath, I had a pillow. I for some reason, I was really so scared. It was in the night. I took the pillow just to kind of try to comfort, just kind of get this rocky motion. And as soon as I did that, as soon as I brought that in, it was as if I was a mother comforting a baby that woke up in the night, and trying to assure the baby, and maybe the baby would keep having colic, you couldn't quiet it down, but you wouldn't abandon it. You would just stay with it till whatever. That image, that felt sense of comfort. Then once that really calmed me down, then I got on the floor, and I did first of all the lift, the two of those that you do for
reflex trigger.
Yeah, that lift, and I did about the third one I did when I got it right. What was the tailbone?
Mm-hmm.
The breath, I didn't know to be the reflex, but it happened. And then immediately I knew that I was like, I had a joy inside of me. And then I did that long enough to kind of get drowsy.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that one's work, I'm gonna try the other one. And I was like, here I was in the middle of the night, getting that card and getting everything tried to set up, and I wasn't sure, and when I got down, finally got the leg, and I brought it up, it was just like, it was the first one I did. It just took my breath away, how it brought in that relaxation breath. So those two things immediately gave me confidence that I could do that, that I was on a right path, but I was still on a long ways to go.
Yeah, so we're talking about the metaphor for those listening. We're talking about what I call the Rosetta Stone of breathing, which is the breathing reflex. and how that needs to be rehabilitated. Now most people in severe stress situations or even moderate stress forget about it, or they don't regard it, and it catches up, because it's really where the nervous system comes back into balance. And it happens moment to moment. And there are times when you don't have time for it, but when you do have time for it, then you need to allow it. So maybe you can expand on that.
Sure. It's interesting what you were mentioning as well, about the inability to probably perform the exercises on your own, or even understand them. Because when you don't have that clarity of mind, it's just not possible, that you can understand or learn anything. It's something like Mike was telling me the other day with people in the army, and their breathing, and their Superman kind of like thing, when they're breathing in the chest. That's the fight or flight, situation going on there. And as Mike said, in that way you can't access anything, in your mind,
Neocortex.
Exactly, neocortex. The information that you have there, it's not available to you. So you got to switch, into this parasympathetic, as you were mentioning. And that's the way, things start, coming to you. But the dilemma, is how do you do it if, you can't get there to learn or to open your mind. That's the only way to access, to calm your nervous system down, the parasympathetic, and then, everything starts opening up.
Right. Well, and like the thing I think, like after that night, then I started watching the DVD where you're talking about what optimal breathing and kind of opening up the kit, and that's just this. I just want to say that in watching that, how many times, and then when it got to the strapping, I was telling Mike this. I must have watched that. I kept just replaying it because I had to keep getting in and bringing it around, and then before I could actually try it, and then when I actually tried it again, it was like that. Whew, oh my gosh, this works. And the more I listened to the tape, the more his understanding, like the mechanics, just the pure mechanics of breathing, was like I recognized it being really. It's just brilliant because it just. In the more I looked at it before coming here, it's just like the complete breakdown of just the mechanics. But it's, if you've done any, as you like journeyed to try to understand the whole, it's the mechanics, but it's not. The mechanics now, emotional, mental, spiritual, so all of it, it all comes together. But if you don't have the breath, most of that other is. You can't quite own it as your own. It's like information that I have and experiences that I have, but with the breath, and that's kind of like working now with you this week.
Yeah, we're working on
it's gradually, it's my breath.
And this woman has been on the path so long and gone through so many different situations that she's such an incredible reporter in terms of what's going on inside herself. And so we'll do a little technique, and she'll give me 5 different things that are going on or went on in her body that she now knows, because she knows her body really well. She just didn't understand the mechanics well enough. So now that the mechanics are coming together, and we're getting into more of a place that I call Shui. The Native Cherokee Indians have the sign language, Shui. How's it going? Shui. We want that sense, and when people feel it, they get it. So there's a lot of people out there that are teaching breathing exercises. They don't have a clue about what it feels like to really be in a deep state of peace. And if you don't know what it feels like, you can be told anything. So there's a real clear feeling that I call the taste of chocolate around breathing that is dependent upon proper mechanics. And proper mechanics is not necessarily a rigid thing. It can be very loose and free and smooth and easy. So, I'm going to say more about that.
Yeah, it was interesting to me the fact that